those thoughts which resonate with higher levels of consciousness will have a more profound, perhaps brighter, more intense vibration, because it's just working with nature. So all beings, we're affected by it all the time, but whether we tune in like a radio to that vibratory rate lets us know if we're, how much and what we're going to receive. But it's there all the time. Adepts, Mahatmas, Buddhas are constantly sending out beneficent ideation. And if we could align ourselves with nature to work with it and to try to raise our consciousness to be aware of that, we could also be in touch with it. But even at the lower level of just human interaction day to day, this transference occurs. The transference occurs when there's a magnetic sympathy. If there's a repulsive tendency, the vibration immediately reaches its destination and is transferred into a thought in the mind of the sensitive, which will be the same thought first generated in the mind of the operator, unless there's a repulsive tendency, in which case it may not be the same. And that's why mediums sometimes can get a picture of what's going on the inner planes, but it depends if they're getting the whole message or not. They may only be able to express a portion of it. So this is sort of an occult science that the Eastern adepts have preserved and has always existed and always will. We're just becoming aware of it in the West more and more, and science is getting closer and closer to these ideas. So what is transferred in this meeting of consciousness of minds, this nerve fluid, are atoms, elementals. These are sort of messengers, their lives that we're affecting and sending back and forth and impressing with a vibration. And that brings up the idea of responsibility. We're responsible for every vibration we put out, even the ones we're not conscious of, even the ones we let out accidentally, so to speak. There's tons of cases of people feeling a calamity at a distance, or sort of someone that they deeply love appearing to them when that person is in crisis or at the time of death. There's stories and cases of these throughout history and in all places. So we can't just dismiss it. The Bhagavad Gita says that there are actually, it's not so much in the Gita. They talk about the three qualities of nature, and that either on the sattvic plane or on the rajasic plane or on the tamasic plane. And sattva is that which is truth, universal, beneficent. Rajas is personal, active, selfish, and tamas is indifference, ignorance, non-awareness. So the Gita says that the qualities of nature are part of every action, every thought. So the idea is to raise our thought to the universal, and then there is a state that surpasses all these turiya. I guess one could say it can combine and surpass. All these resolve into that. But in terms of consciousness and states of consciousness, we've been talking about, dream state, or how we interact with others on the astral plane, the idea of thought transference and so forth. It said that there's 3 states of consciousness. One is Jagrat, which is the waking consciousness. The sleeping is Svapna. And we use the Sanskrit words for these because we don't really have these concepts fully worked out in English. And Sushupti is like the deep dreaming state. And so this forms a trinity, but of course, as in all things with theosophy, there's aspects of each one in each. So there's the Jagrat of Jagrat, the Jagrat of Svapna, the Jagrat of Sushupti, the Svapna of Jagrat, the Svapna of Svapna, and the Svapna of Sushupti. So it really makes 9 stages, and this comes to true mystical states of consciousness to which the adepts have. So the Jagrat of Sushupti, the waking of the deep dream state, corresponds with Devahan, the after-death state. The Svapna of Sushupti would be that consciousness between planets, and the Sushupti of Sushupti would be between rounds. And this is outlined, Mr. Subbarao explains this in some of his lectures. So there's waking consciousness, dreaming, dreamless sleep. And then the Jagrat of Swapna is waking clairvoyance. The dreaming of the dream state is somnambulant clairvoyance. And the dreaming of Sushupti is Kamaloka. And I'm throwing out a lot of terms, but just to show that this has been studied and these planes of consciousness have been explored by beings like the adepts and the masters who are attempting to guide humanity to higher ideas, higher levels of consciousness. So this idea to return to retention of transcendence, through ideation, desire first arose in it, comes a form to manifest in, and then through experience we learn and incorporate that into who we are. So Robert Crosby says that from the ocean of life there finally tends to arise divinity, and that divinity is always acquired. It's not an endowment. It doesn't exist of itself. If we could be made good, if we could be made to turn around and take a righteous course, life might seem very much easier to us. But there is no escaping the law. No one can get us off from the effects of our doing, good or bad. No one can confer knowledge on another. Each one has to see and know for himself. Each one has to gain divinity for himself in his own way. We think of this as a common world, but it isn't so. There are no 2 people who look at life from the same viewpoint, who have the same likes and dislikes, whom the same things affect exactly in the same way. No 2 people are alike either in life or after death of the body. Each makes his own state, each makes his own limitations, each acquires his own divinity. Divinity lies latent in each one of us. All powers lie latent in each one, and no being anywhere can be greater than we may become. What is divinity? But all-inclusive knowledge. True spirituality, he says, is not some hazy condition. It's not something that denies any portion of the universe, nor any kind of being. A hazy abstract condition would mean no men, no principles, no opposites. But divine spirituality is the power to know and see whatever is wished, known, or seen. It is an innate knowledge of the ultimate essence of everything in nature. Such knowledge would not mean seeing all things at once, nor being everywhere at the same time, but it is the power to see and know in any direction, the power to grasp whatever it wishes, the power to shut out whatever it wishes. Otherwise, it would be no power at all, and there would be no use in having power and wisdom, and such beings as the masters could be afflicted with all the grief and misery in the world, unable to help where help is needed. So all-inclusive knowledge lies before every living being if he takes the necessary steps. The real man, that which is synonymous with the one life in each of us, has to assert itself on this plane. And each must act in accordance with his own nature and the responsibility which the oneness of all nature demands. So man occupies the most important place in the whole scheme of evolution because he stands exactly where spirit and matter meet. He's the link between the higher beings and those below. He has to so to act, so to think, in and upon with this physical matter that he raises it all up and gives it another tendency, an upward trend. Because of the constitution of his nature, by reason of man being connected as he is in a physical body with all of nature, the secret doctrine that Madame Blavatsky transmitted states that man can become greater than any one of the Dian Chohans and equal to all of them put together. And that is the goal which lies before him, the goal of the kingly mystery. The seeing and knowing and feeling and acting universally. And that was what was read by the first speaker in the Gita, the Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the difference between the body and the soul, and the kingly mystery that comes from the right use of those. So we're still in the idea of responsibility for the use of our powers. It's implied that the divinity of every being exists, that good and bad that there are good and bad natures, but every being below us, every being above us, has some power of perception, of experience, of knowledge, of wisdom, and for us, we can consciously direct it and thereby influence those beings below us that cannot consciously direct it until they progress to the stage where they can. So this brings us to the idea of development, of unfoldment, of evolution. The beings below us, we could say, are embryonic, and they're in various stages of development just as we are. And then there are men, and then there are great souls, men who have gone through the stages that we're now passing through. So the whole universe is made up of beings, as we said, the one life. There's an assemblage of beings. And because all these beings are interacting in their own way, and all this sort of activity is going on during manifestation, all this thought, all this sort of action is recorded in the Akasha, in the imperishable records. And Crosby said that there's a storehouse of thought that we can put ourselves in position to receive. And that divinity is acquired, as we said. It's there for us to acquire if we will take the necessary steps, he says. we can't draw from that storehouse unless we put ourselves in a position to receive it. He says we have to make room for it. And that could be done through meditation, through maybe shutting off the everyday chatter in our head to